Welcome to the Underdog Sniper Podcast. I'm your host, MGCovers. This is episode 62. Monday, June the 16th, 2025. Hope everybody had a great week, a good weekend, beautiful day here in the DR. Super excited to get go through this podcast. A lot of topics to cover. We have something we're going to end with. It's really unique. Go ahead and give you the outline. We're going to talk about reframing something that's negative into a positive. We got crushed yesterday in baseball, and I'll talk about the importance of doing that, give a couple examples, and we're going to look at the Major League Baseball model year to date. Also talk about the classes model. This is a concept that I came up with that you can apply to your own handicapping. We're running it now for the Club World Cup for soccer, but it can also be applicable to NCAA basketball. We were extremely profitable, 38% ROI with college basketball using the classes model. We're going to do this for college football. I'll give you an introduction to that in this podcast, talk about that. Then we're going to wrap it up talking about this Iowa bettor. Some of you may have heard about this. There was a lawsuit filed by an Iowa bettor. DraftKings owed him $14 million. He bet on the PGA tournament for Pebble Beach, and he was betting under the premise that the tournament would end because of the threat of rain, and it did, and he cashed these crazy parlays. But DraftKings refused to pay it out. They just refunded his money, voided the bet, and now he's suing them. So I'm going to give my insights, and I believe regulation is coming in this industry, and I'll talk about a very simple solution to that entire situation. So let's dive into it, and we'll talk about, give you some background about where we are with Major League Baseball. So model was profitable year to date. Actually, going back to, I'll show you this tab here. Let's talk about, we'll scroll down here. So overall, playing the top 10 teams via the model, going back to May 10th, it's 148 and 141, 19.78 units for an ROI of 6.3%. And then let's look at it. This past week, losing week, down minus 3.65 units. And one thing you have to accept in this business is losing is part of it. Regression, that's just the way it works. And like I've said a gazillion times, the only way to make money in this business is from a long-term investment perspective. You can't have expectations to make profit week in, week out. Even you will have losing months, which we've had losing months this year. And so that's why it's always important from a mental perspective to reframe things into a positive. Now, if you go look at yesterday, look at this. This was wild. We had, I got to pull this up. We had Minnesota and Toronto. Both of these teams were in our top 10. We had closing line value 1.2%, Minnesota at plus 105. We had 1% closing line value, Toronto plus 152, lost both. And these teams were avoiding the sweep, which is another really good angle to play as well as a quote dedicated model. Meaning if a team has lost the first two games in the series, that third game you would play for that team to win. I know Colorado won big over Atlanta. I think there was I think San Diego beat Arizona. They were avoiding a sweep as well. But unfortunately, we lost both of these, down $2,000. And this month has really felt like a grind. And I want to talk about this, and this is real important. So first off, from a bankroll management perspective, I think 2 weeks ago, I increased my daily wager amount to $2,000. Normally it was around 1,000. And so first thing when you're doing something like this, you want to make sure that you wager, the way I teach is you wager no more than 10% of your bankroll per day. So and a big mistake people make is, let's say they put $500 in a sports book. They're like, all right, great, I got $500. I got 3 plays today. I'm going to wager $300 on each play. You're wagering over 50% of your bankroll in one single day. So in that scenario, if you have $500 you've deposited into a sports book, I would recommend risking no more than 10%. So the max you would wager if you've got 1 play or 5 plays would be $50 per day. So in order to wager $2,000 per day, you need a bankroll of $20,000. In order to wager $1,000 per day, regardless if you got 5 teams or 1 team, you need to have a minimum bankroll of $10,000. The reason that's important is it preserves your bankroll doing it that way. And your liability every single day is no more than 10% of your bankroll each day. And you can recover from that. So talked about at the beginning of this podcast, you want to reframe things into a positive. So the way I look at this, we've had we had a winning month going into yesterday. And of course, this wiped out our profits for this month. But again, the way I would reframe this, I would go, okay, we're extremely profitable year to date. We still have half a month of June for Major League Baseball. We have all of July, all of August for Major League Baseball. And I'll pull this up and show you this over here. So I'm just showing you how I reframed this. So what I did was I went back and looked at the same exact model, the success we had last year in July and August. So from August the 1st last year, for the month of August, this model was up 12.85 units for the month of August. And I'll show you July. And let's run this all the way through July. And it was up 15.45 units in July. So the biggest amount of success we had last year with the same model was in July. Now, granted, we're playing it a little bit different. These were the top 6 teams, and now we're playing the top 10. So the win percentage and ROI probably will decrease some. That's why I showed you on that other model. It was 148 and 140, which is a little bit higher than 50%, where you can see here it was 193 and 169 closing last year, which was about 54% win percentage. So again, going back to reframing your mind, I feel like we'll still be extremely profitable. Major League Baseball just had some really tough breaks, even with yesterday. And even since we've increased our unit size, that hasn't been profitable. But like anything, there'll be regression the other way, which means if you're on a 5-15 losing skid, the best thing you can tell yourself is, hey, this will eventually end. It's the same deal if you're on a really good run. If you're on a 15-5 run based on regression, and what regression means, just simplifying it, means a coin flip. It's 50%. So if you're way above 50% in sports betting on a 15-5 run, you're going to regress on the next 20 wagers more than likely, meaning it's not going to go to 50%. It's probably going to go well below 50%. So to bring it closer back to that regression. And that's just how sports betting works. You're on a losing skid. It won't last. It will regress and move back to positive, and of course, vice versa. So having that and understanding that, and in order to reframe that, will help you tremendously with your sports betting. So no changes there with Major League Baseball, and we'll continue to wager this way. And I'm not going to decrease the amount. And I think that's another big mistake people will make, is sometimes if you're going through regression, you'll say, okay, wow, we lost money here. We had a negative week. I'm going to lower my wager size. I don't wager amount. I don't agree with doing that, simply based on the law of regression, which means more than likely, based on regression, we'll have a winning week this week. And if we lower our wager amount, say we go back down to 1,000 per day, we wouldn't be able to take advantage of the quote regression. So we'll keep that same amount, keep plugging away, and still believe we'll be extremely profitable in baseball. All right, now let's switch gears and talk about the classes model. And that's just a term that I came up with. And I've applied this to several different sports. And what you're looking at is the rankings for the Club World Cup this year. So you look at there's green teams, the blue teams, the yellow teams, and the red teams. So classes model is where you take teams, and let's talk about what class, the reason why you would do classes model as opposed to a traditional quote stat model. Classes model is you're trying to rank teams based on their class. And let's use college football, because I think people will understand it better with college football. College football, you have teams in the SEC might end up playing teams in a lower conference the beginning of the year. And let's use this for example. Let's say NC State is playing Navy. Okay. NC State is in the ACC. I would say the ACC is not as good of a conference as, say, the SEC, but it's still a better conference than what Navy plays. So if I was just creating a line off the top of my head, I would say that line would probably be NC State minus 16 if they played the opening game of this year. So Navy is moving up in class and playing a team outside of their normal class. So the correct way to play that would be NC State. And where I got this concept was from horse racing. And this is also similar to greyhound racing. And what happens is the sharp approach. So if a horse wins, let's say a horse is a C horse. If he wins a C race, he gets promoted into B. So one of the sharp angles to play is you would fade that horse that won the C class moving into B class, meaning you would keep him out of the trifecta or whatever, the perfecta or whatever. But it will look on paper like, hey, this is the horse to race on because he's probably had several good races in the C class. He won his last race, so it's going to show he was the number one finisher in his last race, but he's moving up in class. And more times than not, that particular horse that moves up in class will struggle against the better class. So one adaptation or one thing you can do with this classes model, they got two ways to play it. And I'll show you the results for an NCAA basketball. These are A teams. So one way to play this would be to play for the A teams. So anytime an A team is playing, as long as they're not playing another A team, it would be a play irregardless of the line. So for example, in this model, if you have PSG was playing the number one team, if they were playing LAFC, the line was minus 300, or the line was minus 150, it would be a play for PSG. Now, that's one approach. The second approach would be to play against the D teams. So you see all of these D teams down here. So if a C team or a B team or an A team was playing against a D team, you would fade the D team irregardless of the line. So I want to show you some results. We did this for the NCAA basketball tournament. Now, this was brand new, the way I classified these teams, but it was extremely profitable, and that's why we we only wagered like $100 per play. But you can see this went 11-6, 38.5% ROI. So we did the same thing. So we played for the A teams and played against the D teams. And I don't think, I'll have to go back and look at that, but I don't think we had any D teams. So an example of an A team this year would have been like Texas A&M, Florida. So irregardless of the line. So if Texas A&M was playing, I don't know, Illinois State, and the line was minus 22, it would be play for the quote A team, irregardless of the spread. And doing it this way makes it very simple to handicap. And that went 11-6, 38% ROI. And obviously when we do this next year, we will increase our wager amount. Now, you can do this for World Cup. So if you have a team like Argentina, maybe playing Tunisia, Argentina would be an A team. Tunisia would be like a C team. So that would be a play for Argentina. You can apply this to college football. You can do this for NCAA basketball. Even though I did it for the tournament, you could also do this in November and December when a lot of those teams are playing out of conference teams. You could do it for a lot of those Thanksgiving tournaments, Christmas tournaments, and NCAA basketball. Now, the hard part about this model is how are you going to create your power rankings? And I made a coaching video on that as well. There's several different ways, but it could be statistically driven as well. So whatever stats you're using to rank those teams, you could do it that way. But then that becomes difficult because one of these good teams, I can't remember one of these D teams down here, they won like 5 of their last games, but again, against the teams in their league. So that's not the same as playing a team in the Premier League or Series A league. So it becomes difficult, but there's several different ways you can do it. If you're completely oblivious to it, you can just simply type in, you can even use ChatGPT. Say, hey, I want you to use the internet and rank all of the teams for the Club World Cup and see the response you get there. Again, that might not be the best way because there's going to be some subjectivity factored into that, but there's going to be some subjectivity factored into it anyway as well. So classes model is definitely something legit that you could try. And in fact, I'm working on a classes model for NFL and hope to have a coaching video for that out here pretty soon. So very valid concept. Again, it was profitable in NCAA basketball. We're going to do the same for football. A tremendous amount of volume can be found in college football. And we tracked it last year. It was up the first 4 weeks of the season. I want to say it was up like 25 units. I'll have to go back and maybe share that on Instagram. I'll look for that and share the results there, but it was very profitable. Mistake I made, I went back to the model. I should have stuck with that classes model for college football. But anyway, so that's a classes model. Next, I want to move on to a very interesting situation. And this happened back in May, but it got a lot of traction on social media. I just saw this on social yesterday. An Iowa bettor sues DraftKings over $14.2 million in winnings from a rain-shortened golf tournament. So I don't want to read all this and bog it down, but I'll give you the gist of it. So there was after 3 rounds of golf going into Sunday. This was for the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. So this was back, I think, in January. And I do want to read some of the bets. So because this is very sharp what this kid did. So he basically played. You can just Google this, but in essence, what he did was he made a bunch of parlay bets. One was, and he used the exact order that they were in. And so what he realized, hey, this Pebble Beach Pro-Am tournament might be canceled because of the rain. So he created all these parlays on the premise that, hey, if this thing is rain shortened, I'm going to cash all these parlays. So he wagered real small the first bet. Let's look at them. Yeah, he had a 20 pick parlay, $100 bet, and that would have paid out $4.6 million. And then at 10-18, he wagered another $25 parlay on the top 20 finishers in no particular order. That was going to pay out $250. Then he wagered at 11-22, another bet for $50, identical to the first bet. That would have had a payout of $2.3 million. And then 11:59, he placed a fourth bet identical to the first, $100 with a payout of $4.6 million. And then looks like his last bet was at 12:01 for $50, identical to the third bet, which would have paid out 2.3. So this total payout was potential for 14.2 mil. So what happened during the tournament? They delayed the start of this tournament. And then finally at 9:15 that night on that Sunday, the PGA Tour said, hey, this is final. So technically, he won all these parlays. And the lawsuit, DraftKings unilaterally voided all 5 of his bets and refunded the wager amount, citing rules that say future bets placed after the last shot of what is later determined to be the final round are voided. Now, I'm going to make this very simple. As a sports book, this is how we solve this. And again, in my opinion, and I've said this, those of you follow me for a long period of time, the sports book industry will have stricter regulations and should be regulated to some degree. This is a very simple premise. If a sports book takes a wager, irregardless of the circumstances, they have to pay it out. The reason that's important to note, because if this wager would have lost, it would not have been voided. And he makes that point in this article as well. He says, and I quote, this is his attorney speaking, if he had lost the bet and said, I want my money back because I didn't think the weather was going to cancel things, DraftKings would have kept his money. The rules that DraftKings had in place at the time of the tournament did not allow them to void the bets. They changed the rules after the tournament. So this is becoming a very significant issue. This will get a lot of traction, and hopefully they will rule in favor of the bettor, of course. And it's not that I'm, pro bettor or against sports books in general, but again, going back to the premise that if you're a sports book and you take a wager, then irregardless of the outcome, you're basically accepting liability. And I think that should be the rule. So what they should have done, hey, if they realized it was going to be a rain delay and it might rain, then what they should have done is just, voided all wagers and not let anybody get any action down until the tournament actually started. So very simple premise. And if they want to solve this problem, I think that's a very simple way to do it is, hey, if, once you take a wager, you're liable for the outcome of that wager, irregardless of the circumstances. It's the same deal as a bettor. If there's a good pitcher on the mound, maybe he's, scheduled to start, he gets off the bus. When he gets off the bus, he sprains his ankle at 6:25 and he's supposed to start at 8:00, or maybe he's coming out of the dugout, whatever it is. And he's a scratch like 30 minutes before and you've already placed a wager. That's part of sports betting. Things like that happen. But for whatever reason, sports books don't hold themselves accountable for, those unusual outcomes, and they should. But again, if they would regulate this or make a law, not sure the logistics, but once you accept a wager as a sports book, you're liable to pay out that wager. Very simple. So anyway, that's a wrap for the podcast. Hope everybody has a great week. Got a ton of content coming your way, and have a great week. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.